At 0912 hours in the Bashi Channel, the narrow strait between Taiwan and the Philippines that carries some of the world's busiest shipping, the Chinese Type 054A frigate did something that would be remembered as a masterclass in how not to hunt an American submarine. The captain ordered active sonar. A thunderous ping ripped across the water, loud enough to be heard by every ship and submarine for hundreds of nautical miles. On the bridge, it felt like a bold decision. In reality, it was a declaration of weakness, because what the frigate did not know was that a Virginia-class submarine was already there, lying silently below the thermal layer, waiting. For the Chinese, this was supposed to be a show of force. For the Americans, it became a case study in how dense destroys noise. Before we begin, make sure to hit the like button. It helps us beat the YouTube algorithm. At sea, escalation is faster than politics. In the narrow lanes of the Bashi Channel, seconds matter more than speeches. One mistake can turn routine patrols into incidents that ripple through governments. Today, noise had chosen its champion. The frigate's captain believed aggression would scare the Americans. The submarine's captain relied on patience. Only one of those choices would age well. At sea, every decision burns fuel, exhausts crews, and spends credibility. Charts can be argued. The water never lies. Calm voices win more often than loud orders. On this morning, patience was the deadliest weapon in the American arsenal. The Jankai II-class frigate was modern on paper. She carried vertical launch cells with HQ-16 surface-to-air missiles, YU-8 rocket-assisted torpedoes, a long towed array sonar, and a Z-9 helicopter waiting on deck. Against weak opposition, she was dangerous. Against a Virginia-class submarine, she was a loud student facing a silent teacher. The captain trusted his technology. The ocean cared nothing for his trust. The seabed was hard, the shipping lanes were full of noise, and the thermal layer bent sound like a mirror. Tools without discipline are useless. The Americans were about to prove that lesson one ping at a time. Beneath the layer, the Virginia-class glided in silence. Her pump jet moved water with such smoothness that even experienced sonar operators struggled to detect it. Inside control, sailors monitored every Chinese ping, converting each into bearings and ranges. The AN/BQ-10 sonar suite was painting the frigate more clearly than the frigate could ever hope to paint the submarine. A faint helicopter blade rate added to the picture. In undersea warfare, physics always decides the battle. The submarine's captain understood that patience wins more wars than firepower. His only order was simple: watch, wait, and let the other side make mistakes. Before we continue, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. At 0915, the frigate dropped sonobuoys in an L-shaped line, spreading them across the channel like fishing nets. Above, the Z-9 helicopter dipped its sonar into the water, rotor wash carving ripples into the sea. Farther out, a US P-8A Poseidon aircraft deployed its own pattern of buoys. The difference was discipline. American crews were sharing data over Link 16, building a common picture across ships and aircraft. The frigate had no such luxury. She was alone, loud, and convinced she was the hunter. The truth was very different. While the frigate shouted into the water, the Virginia was already drawing the trap in silence. The frigate's first mistake was tactical. The sonar team treated a faint bearing like a clear track, as if the ocean were a hallway. But the sea is never that simple. Sound bent downward under the thermal layer. Merchant traffic filled the water with false contacts. The towed array flirted with the frigate's own wake, feeding confusion. The second mistake was pride. The captain demanded results, ordering a hard turn to close the buoy line. That maneuver created a blind zone, the ship's own baffles. In that cone of silence, the Virginia slipped past undetected, turning the map upside down. The hunter had just become the hunted. Inside the submarine, the ANBYG-1 combat system turned the Chinese mistakes into an exact firing solution. The plot was perfect. 2 Mark 48 advanced torpedoes could have ended the engagement in less than 1 minute. The photonic mast rose for only 1 frame, capturing a faint glimpse of the frigate's superstructure before disappearing. It was all the Americans needed. Every number on the fire control screen told the same story. The frigate was trapped, but the captain never gave the order to fire. Professional navies prepare for the shot precisely, but they never need to take it. Restraint, not weapons, was the American answer. At 0918, panic began to show. The Z-9 helicopter dropped a lightweight torpedo on a guessed bearing. The weapon churned in search mode, sweeping for a target it would never find. The Virginia released a small countermeasure. It imitated submarine noise perfectly, drawing the torpedo away. Seconds later, the weapon burned out its battery. Contact lost. On the frigate's bridge, officers reported failure. In control of the submarine, sailors quietly logged the time. The score was Patience 1, Panic 0. The Americans had expended nothing but silence. The Chinese had wasted one of their few real weapons. At 0921, the Americans applied pressure. A U.S. destroyer to the west launched an MH-60 Romeo helicopter. It dipped its sonar into the water, overlapping with the Chinese buoy line. The Aegis combat system recorded every radar and radio emission from the frigate. The Poseidon above monitored the helicopter's fuel curve. Helicopters can only hover for so long before fuel drags them home. Meanwhile, the Virginia slid directly into the frigate's blind spot, less than 3,000 yards astern. The Americans now controlled every angle. The frigate was boxed in by silence, with no way to escape. At this point, the fire control solution aboard the submarine was not just probable, it was lethal. 2 Mark 48 torpedoes, wire-guided and deadly, could have struck before the frigate even realized it was under attack. But the Americans held fire. Discipline demanded patience. Instead of ending the game, the submarine tightened the box. Every option for the frigate grew worse. Turning risked losing sonar coverage. Sprinting risked opening baffles. Slowing risked grounding the helicopter. The frigate was trapped by her own choices. She had walked into a vice, and the Americans were the ones closing it. At 0926, the frigate grew desperate. A CY-5 rocket erupted from her deck, launching another lightweight torpedo far ahead. The splash was loud. The result was nothing. Once again, the Americans had not even twitched. Once again, the Chinese had wasted a weapon. The Virginia answered with something far more powerful: information. A short message buoy relayed the situation to the network. Frigate located, track confirmed, options exhausted. The submarine's captain added only 2 words: teach patience. That phrase would echo across the strike group. Aggression had failed, silence had won, and the lesson was being written into the record. The Poseidon expanded its buoy field, sealing off the channel. The submarine slid deeper under the thermal layer, disappearing completely. Above, the frigate's sonar operators scrambled to rebuild confidence. Their pings grew faster, then slower, then irregular, as if speed alone could make up for lack of results. It only made the problem worse. The towed array complained and was eventually reeled in. The Z-9 helicopter's fuel hit bingo, forcing it back to the deck. In less than 15 minutes, the frigate had burned through every aggressive option and achieved nothing. Noise had collapsed into silence, and silence had won. Escalation is fast, de-escalation is slow. With no helicopter and no array, the frigate was blind. Its last card was political. A scripted radio call accused an unidentified submarine of endangering navigation. The words sounded strong. The subtext was weakness. The Virginia never replied. Her message was silence. Inside the submarine, sailors knew the truth. Every ping the frigate made had been a confession. Every calm minute the Americans held was a victory. Restraint had carried the day. The Virginia had proved the oldest law in undersea warfare: those who make the most noise lose first. At 0930, the final act unfolded. The frigate refused to share data with the Seahawk nearby, hoping to save face. It did not matter. The SPY-1 radar aboard the U.S. destroyer had logged everything. Then the Virginia delivered her only visible gesture. A photonic mast broke the surface for a few seconds, far from the frigate. A long lens caught the image, just one fry, enough to prove the Americans had been there all along. Not a taunt, a receipt, proof that the submarine had owned the battle space from the first ping to the last. The message was undeniable. The frigate slowed. Its damaged sonar was hauled in. The captain filed his report. Aggressive search. No confirmed results. On the American side, the message was sharper. Aggressive noise. Clear lesson. In control, the submarine sailors exhaled. No torpedoes fired. No ships lost. No headlines. Only a clean logbook and another reminder that silence is stronger than noise. The Bashi Channel returned to normal. Merchant ships steamed along their routes, and the Virginia slipped away, unseen, already on to her next mission. Patience had written the ending, and pride had written the mistakes. If this had gone to war, the story would have been brutal. The Virginia's Mark 48 torpedoes could have turned the frigate into an artificial reef in under 1 minute. The helicopter would have been splashed before it ever found a target. The destroyer's Aegis system would have tracked every move, and the Poseidon would have mapped every sound. Chinese families would have mourned a lost crew, and Beijing would have been forced to explain why a frigate had challenged the US Navy in open waters. But that war never happened, because restraint, not weapons, carried the day. By 10:20, the sea lane sounded like a clock again. AIS beacons marched along their routes. Merchant ships moved on time. A weather front rolled in from the northeast, smoothing the sea. The Virginia-class submarine slid beneath it all, a shadow of steel and silence. The captain's final entry in the log was short: maintained advantage, no further action. For some, victory means headlines. For professionals, victory means no one notices. The Americans had taught the lesson, the Chinese had learned it, and the Bashi Channel remained open for the world's trade. exactly as it should. By 1100 hours, the lesson was complete. The frigate limped back towards safer waters, her sonar damaged, her crew exhausted, and her confidence shaken. No weapons had been fired, yet the tactical outcome was absolute. The Americans had maintained dominance without revealing their full hand. For Beijing, this incident would be hard to spin. The captain had promised strength, but all he had delivered was noise, wasted torpedoes, and a trail of frustration logged by every American sensor in the area. The Virginia, meanwhile, carried on as if nothing had happened. Her crew rotated watches, logged data, and slid gently toward deeper water. They knew the truth that headlines would never print. Real victories at sea are measured in what doesn't happen. No ships sunk, no families mourning, no trade disrupted, just freedom of navigation preserved. For the US Navy, this was not just another patrol, it was a message. The undersea domain remains firmly under American control, no matter how many challenges appear on the surface. The Virginia, meanwhile, carried on as if nothing had happened. Her crew rotated watches, logged data, and slid silently toward deeper water. They knew the truth that headlines would never print. Real victories at sea are measured in what doesn't happen. No ships sunk, no families mourning, no trade disrupted, just freedom of navigation preserved. For the US Navy, this was not just another patrol, it was a message. The undersea domain remains firmly under American control, no matter how many challenges appear on the surface. Remember to hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Your support means a lot.